He was fired from his very first job for lying. It was his first job as a newspaper reporter in London, and he got caught making up quotes. But a more right-wing newspaper didn't see that as disqualifying, so they snapped him up and sent him to Brussels to cover the headquarters of the European Union. Once there, he spent the early 1990s doing what he did best. He made things up. He filed reports about how the autocratic foreigners running the EU were making harebrained rules about what the UK could and couldn't do. Things like the shape of Britain's strawberries, and how British cheese could be made, and making good old-fashioned English fishermen wear hairnets. There was even an entire column about the EU making condoms too small. None of this was true, but he seemed to think it was all great fun. He told an interviewer, quote, "I was just chucking these rocks over the garden wall and listening to this amazing crash from the greenhouse next door over in England. Everything I wrote from Brussels was having this amazing explosive effect on the Conservative Party, and it really gave me this, I suppose, rather weird sense of power," end quote. His right-wing newspaper would splash his headlines on its front page about the secret evil plans of European bureaucrats to take over British life and rule the UK from afar. And his newspaper readers learned to distrust and hate the EU. Those readers included a lot of conservative lawmakers, and he watched with glee as civil war broke out in his own party about how anti-Europe they should be. Because people who know him well will tell you that even back then, as a cub reporter chucking those rocks over the garden wall, he had higher ambitions. His name, of course, was Boris Johnson. You got to hand it to him on one score. However improbably, he did eventually achieve the highest ambition of them all. He became the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. All it took was tearing his party and his country apart and plunging the UK into a catastrophic economic and logistical crisis by wrenching his nation out of that thing that he taught so many of his countrymen to hate, the European Union. And the story of how Boris Johnson came to resign as Prime Minister today after 3 tumultuous years at the helm is, of course, its own unique tale of hubris and scandal. Unlawfully suspending Parliament to ram through his own Brexit deal, throwing parties during COVID lockdowns, promoting a lawmaker he knew to have a history of sexual harassment allegations, trying to get a job for his girlfriend. Enough scandals to have brought down 10 prime ministers. He blustered through all of them until he couldn't. But it's also a story of what happens, and stop me if this sounds too familiar, when too many people are taken in by an ambitious liar who for years is treated like a joke until suddenly he's the most dangerous man in the country. Take a look at this clip of Boris Johnson on a news quiz show in 2003. This is just a couple of years after he first became a member of Parliament. Watch as how much of a joke even he treats the idea of him being Prime Minister someday.
There has been talk of you, Boris, perhaps becoming the next Conservative leader.
I think the chances of that are about as
likely as you presenting
as,
I've got
or being blinded by a champagne cork or decapitated by a frisbee or locked in a disused fridge or some other statistically.
But these things do.
You've got a very effective opposition which is being grotesquely let down by the media.
They're laughing, Boris, they're laughing.
And they're agreeing, they're clapping.
Yeah.
It was all a joke. There was no way someone as buffoonish as Boris Johnson could get it together to become Prime Minister. Once he became mayor of London, a surprise in such a liberal city, the iconic image we all have of him is hanging helplessly off of that zip line, British flags in hand, boosting his city's hosting of the Olympics. He didn't take himself or anything too seriously. He managed to come across as harmless. When he campaigned to get people to vote to leave the EU in the 2016 Brexit referendum, he toured the country with frightening-looking images of hordes of foreigners invading, promising people they'd save all this money and reinvest it in healthcare. It was all invented. Boris Johnson just wanted to be prime minister. He watched gleefully as the Brexit referendum and then the years of trying to actually extricate the UK from the EU. This whole project, built out of his lies and ambition, tore the country apart. But he did finally get the job he wanted, and he had to be dragged practically kicking and screaming out of office. There's a reason people call Boris Johnson Trumpian, but for all the obvious parallels to our own recent history, it appears that the United Kingdom is going to get one thing out of this change of leaders that we didn't get: a peaceful transfer of power. Now, to be clear, it's not over yet. Johnson says he will remain prime minister until his party chooses a successor, which could take months. And it's not like he's built up a lot of trust. Some people think his resignation announcement may be just a delay tactic in hopes that he can still hold on to his job long term. But I think it's fair to say that no one expects Boris Johnson to send an armed mob of his supporters to storm Parliament if he doesn't get his way. One reason for that is that Boris Johnson doesn't have many supporters left. More than 50 members of Johnson's government quit in order to force him out. His own party abandoned him, something that never happened to Donald Trump. And here in this country, not only did we not get a peaceful transfer of power, we're still investigating, still learning the full contours of Trump's attempt to break our democratic system to remain in power. Yesterday marked 18 months since the attack on the Capitol. The Justice Department says more than 855 people have been arrested for their roles in the attack, nearly 330 of whom have pled guilty, including a handful of militia members who've pled guilty to seditious conspiracy. Another 10 people have been found guilty at trial. As for the investigation in Congress, tomorrow, Trump's White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, who was in the middle of so many crucial moments in the days and weeks leading up to the attack on the Capitol, Pat Cipollone will sit for a transcribed, videotaped interview with the January 6th committee. And next week, more public hearings. On Tuesday morning, the committee will present its findings on links between Trump and the extremist militias that played a pivotal role in the attack. This will reportedly include details of conversations between Trump allies and these extremist groups. And the committee will reportedly be holding a second hearing next week on Thursday. This one will be in prime time, which may suggest that they expect it to be particularly important. Perhaps we can expect some kind of synthesis of all the investigation has uncovered thus far. It's going to take a while to come to terms with all the damage wrought by January 6th and by Donald Trump's time in power. Like Boris Johnson, it wasn't too long ago that Donald Trump was a figure of ridicule, his presidential aspirations a joke. Then their respective political parties fell in line behind them. Today in the UK, the Conservative Party has belatedly realized the mistake they made. We're still waiting on the Republicans.